Welcome into our lives.
And welcome to the Expanders Club podcast.
We're so happy to have you.
Join us as we embark on a journey of deep exploration, soul searching, and asking the hard questions.
With the goal of truly understanding the most aligned, empowered, and purposeful versions of ourselves.
We want to live an extraordinary life, and we're willing to dig deep to find out what it takes.
Buckle up. You're about to meet a new version of yourself, an extraordinary one. Hello, my friends. How are we doing? Happy holiday season. Isn't it lovely? My name is Brooke Harris, and I am your host here at the Expanders Club podcast. I am so grateful and feeling so lucky to get to hang out with you and talk all things spirituality, wellness, transformation, expansion. We have some wild things we're going to get into in the new year. So, looking forward to that. And, I'm just here with you along on the ride, holding your hand, trying to make it through life in a way that's fun and interesting and, allows us to be our biggest and brightest. So hopefully I have helped with that this year. We are coming up. It's almost been a year since we started this podcast, and it has been such a gift to me. So I hope I've been able to share some of that back. But how's it going? How's December going? This month is always a little bit weird, right? It's like, hurry up and finish out the new year, or achieve all the things that you maybe thought you were supposed to, but didn't quite. For me, running a business separately, it is, we just had our final board meeting, sending out all the investor updates. It's closing out, it's a lot of things. And it's also, really this month and this year, especially, is a really powerful time for personal development stuff. So fitting it all in, but I'm actually feeling really calm and good about it. If you haven't had a chance to listen to our December themes episode, I highly recommend you do that. It highlights, the important themes and goals for December. And it definitely has been helpful as a guiding light for me on how and where to spend my time and what kind of mindset to get in. So I hope that helps you all. Super excited for today's guest, Linsey Akey. She is a Somatic and Mindfulness Practitioner and spiritual teacher. She guides people back into a relationship with their intuition after trauma and burnout. And I know many of you could use that. I certainly, was in that place a few years ago and would not have made it out of that without my coach. So she drops some incredible information. We talk a lot about, unlayering the conditioning and pain in order to unveil and reveal the truest version of yourself. We talk about this mindset of anything is possible. Fun side story. Linsey actually has a podcast as well. It's called Can We Start Over podcast. It's a podcast she has with her husband, and they sold up and decided to leave their home and their hometown and everything that they knew and loved with 3 children, and sold all their stuff and left. And they went and traveled, and they lived in Baja for a few months, and they've now settled, or, maybe not fully settled, but they are now in Ojai, California. And so really kind of, started their life over and are kind of on this great adventure and journey together. Something that is really cool. They talk about through their podcast, and is definitely super inspiring. I think plenty of us have had that moment, whether it's a big starting over or a small starting over, where it's like, how do we find the bravery and courage to do so? And Lindsey certainly has enough for all of us. And so she shares a bit of that story and how they got to the place where they were courageous enough to say, what if we did this? What else is out there for us? And that's where the anything is possible mindset comes in. And also having that mindset, she talks about having the anything is possible mindset and also not having an attachment to the outcome. So that's a little bit more difficult, right? And both of those things are something that I am actively practicing and hoping to get really good at in my new year in 2025. But I'll give you guys a little example. So my husband and I have decided to buy a house, our first home. We've been renters for years, it just has made sense for our lifestyle, cost of living in LA, running a business and putting everything we had back into the business. So we're moving and we've decided to buy a house, and we put our first offer in on a house this past weekend. I'll speed to the end and tell you that we didn't get the house, which is totally okay. But, certainly part of it was the like anything is possible mindset we followed. Like my husband's obsessed with freaking Redfin. I'm sure there are many about you, the Zillow Redfin lovers, like he won't get off of it. And of course we're looking for a house, but we're kind of not fully actively looking because we're moving to this place. We're moving from California to North Carolina, and we're not ready to do so yet. So it feels almost kind of silly to look until we land. However, my husband is obsessed with Redfin, so he's been looking. And on Friday, he found this place that like really checked a lot of our boxes. Our realtor, we already have a realtor there because we had went and kind of scouted a bit back in October. Our realtor went and looked at it, and she was like, damn, this place is pretty good. Checks all your boxes, or a lot of them. And so all of a sudden we're following the steps to put an offer in. By Saturday morning, we had an offer in. Today's Monday. We heard back today. And so that's where some of this anything is possible mindset started coming in for me. And it's a place I like to live in anyway, but it was like, could it really be that easy? If this house, it was all feeling meant to be, right? Like it was all kind of just going smoothly. Could we actually, and depending on where you live, here in LA, we hear these horror stories of like people who have, they're searching for a house and they put in 15 offers before they get the house that they want. And so totally prepared for a path that has a little bit of heartbreak on it. But this anything is possible mindset started kicking in. It was like, could it be that easy? That the first house we put an offer in on is perfect for us. Mind you, we didn't see the house in person, which is probably a little bit crazy, but we buy this house sight unseen, we move in, everything's good and everything's perfect. And it's like the questioning and all the stories start to come in with that, and it's like shooing away those stories and be like, why not? If anything is possible, why can't it be that easy and that perfect that this all just works out? Now, great. That's a great place to live in, except for then there's also the reality of it's like almost like the future or this decision, of course, is in someone else's hands, right? It's in the seller's hands. And there were competitive offers for this home. So it's then the not having any attachment to the outcome, which overall I have really, really improved in. And I'm really happy with the place that I'm at. It's certainly miles away from where I used to be, like trying to control and being, like forcing the outcome that I wanted. I'm certainly not in that energy anymore. And honestly, that energy is not serving anyone, and it's what led to my burnout, and it's so exhausting and all the things. But man, not having an attachment to the outcome is hard. Even when you know all the spiritual things, like the universe has my back, what is for me won't miss me. If it's meant to happen, it will happen. If not this, then there's something better. Even knowing all of those things in a situation like this, where you're trying to get something that you really want, right? It is difficult. The non-attachment to outcome. So I'd give myself, also as the days go on, it gets even harder. Like day one, where anything's possible, you're like, you put in a bid, you're feeling good, anything's possible. By Sunday, we thought we were going to hear back Sunday night, and we didn't. We knew they were meeting to talk about it. We didn't. And so like, that's when you start to start to spiral a bit. So I give myself, out of 100%, I give myself a 70. Would grade myself at 70. I did 70% decent on this one, and, we'll only improve. So a little bummed we didn't get the house, but, you guys will be the first to know when we do get a house. And it'll be so clear all the reasons why we didn't get this one, because there's something better out there for us. So just funny to, play out these lessons in real time. But I had a really fun conversation with Lindsey, and, as it always does, the universe dropped her into my lap at exactly the perfect time. Such an expander for me, someone who has left, we're selling all of our stuff similar to them, sold all their stuff, left something that they knew. I've been here, my husband's been here for 18 years. I've been in LA for 15 years. So leaving certainly all that we've known our adult life for a brand new place. And Lindsey did it with twins and a young child. So 3 children. We're just taking 1 kid and a dog and 2 bunnies. But just very expansive, and some expansive, very timely lessons and conversation for me. So I hope you guys find it the same. If nothing else, I think it's very entertaining. Lindsey is entertaining. We have some good laughs. And there's plenty of little nuggets, no matter where you are in life, whether you are looking at starting over, a new beginning. I mean, we're heading into 2025. It feels like a lot of new beginnings, whether it's in a big way or a small way, or just a new frequency of fully stepping into yourself. Feels very new. So this episode feels very timely, very important. Some great thoughts, lessons, practices for you to take into your new year. With that said, I am also, if you're new and just this is the first time you're tuning in, I am an oracle. And what that means is that I have the ability to see, hear, know things through the quantum field, through the Akashic records. I use different modalities like tarot, like the Akashic records, channeling to gain and gather information and share it with people. And I have just launched my year ahead readings. This could be for a new year or a birthday. Just so happens a new year is upon us. And so there are 2 different offerings. One is a live session with me where you get to ask questions. I wanted to make an option that was a little more price accessible for people, and is honestly just as good. You get a ton of information. And so there's a second option where you don't get live time with me, but I send you a written roadmap for your year and it's the same things we talk about in the live call. So it's themes, your word for the year, action items, how to take steps and actions to fulfill the themes. A lot of good info that's just kind of like a North Star, a guiding light to prepare you for the year, and then also help you move through it very gracefully and in the most expanded ways. So those are live. I'll share a link to them. If you're feeling called to book in a session, I would love to spend some time with you and tell you about your year ahead. Feels like a lot of us have some big exciting things coming this year. So with that, I am so happy to share this episode with Linsey Akey with you all. Thank you, my friends. Happy holidays to you. Thank you so much for spending time with me. We'll see you soon. All right, Lindsey, my friend, my new friend.
Yes,
this is our first time truly meeting. Met through a mutual friend. I'm dying to chat with you because one, there's a million places that we can and will go in this episode, but I have this admiration crush on you for this massive thing you've done in life that so many of us have wanted to do. Myself, as an Aries rising, and I'd love to know what your astrology is if you know those things.
I do, yeah.
Okay, we'll have to get to that. But as an Aries rising, I can't tell you how many times I've wanted to, in my words, and I don't think these will be words, but burn it all down and just start over and walk away. And you and your husband and your children did that. You guys started over. You left you left a life that was or wasn't working. I'll let you tell that story. Wasn't working for you for something bigger and better, and like completely changed and walked away from everything you knew.
Yeah. We did that. And that's funny because I was talking just a couple weeks ago to someone and they also said burn it down. That could feel true, but that's not what happened.
Yeah.
We just like left it clean.
Yeah. I love that. And that's why I think it kind of depends on my burn it down is like a good, like it's the dragon inside of me, right? It's like a good empowering thing. It's not necessarily like you know, leave things in a bad place, but it definitely could. That's why I was like, I feel like you're going to have a much more peaceful way of explaining exactly what you guys did.
Well, you know, even you just saying that makes me remember like the earth, she be on fire because she needs to sometimes, you know what I mean? And we are like, oh no, of course we don't want to like get hurt. We want to like have our homes. But this like necessary turning of the earth, then it could be burning it down. And so I guess I'll start with, it's so funny because there literally are 1 million entry points into this, what we did. And I guess I'll just start at like the most fun. In 2022, the summer of 2022, my husband and I, we went on a vacation. We are with our kids. You know, we have 3 kids. We actually we came to LA, just like basic vacation. And we had done that 1,000 times. You know, we're used to traveling. Something clicked. There's all these funny little threads. Like we met Big Boy in Fort Worth. And then we met Andre 3000 in LA. That has nothing to do with it. But anyway, everything was an ingredient into like anything's possible. And we just had a vacation. We stayed in an Airbnb. You know, we had a 1-year-old and 2 7-year-olds at the time.
Wow.
And for whatever reason, we went home from that very normal trip, and 3 days later, I was like, you know, Britt, my husband, I was like, we could move. Now we could actually, what if we just left? What if we just left Texas? What if we tried to sell our house? And in that moment, all of these years of the bad kind of burning it down and like the inner work and the pain and the practice led to like this seed. Well, a seed, I guess, had been planted a while ago, but it was like it sprouted and we were like, oh, we could.
I love that your shift is so beautiful and so much more beautiful than mine, that where we went from burn it down to the actual catalyst for you guys. And I think a lot of us are starting to like shift into this thinking, but then it's like, it's very expansive thinking, and it's also very scary of the point of anything is possible. And like, if anything is possible, and we get to, if you've spent 10 seconds in spirituality, you know that we get to create, we're the creators of our life. What are we doing?
Yeah.
You know? And
right.
That sounds like kind of the moment that you had.
Exactly. And the what are we doing? Because we were in this place where it was completely comfortable. Like I will always say, we have this amazing community back in Texas where we're from. Beautiful home, you know, like we're chilling at this point. When a few years before that, we weren't chilling. So something about that time sparked this, let's see what's possible. And we held on to that with a level of non-attachment that I didn't previously know was possible, that we could just be like, literally, let's just see what happens. So that was like it was July 15th. November 15th, we had so this is 4 months. We fixed our house up, sold our house, had an estate sale, sold everything, moved into a friend's house who was traveling for about 6 weeks, tied up all the loose ends, and we were on a plane to Baja to live there for 3 months. So in 4 months, from a literal dream, like maybe one day, wouldn't that be nice?
Right.
So it wasn't something that I actually, during COVID, when everyone had a lot more time on their hands, we were like, oh, wouldn't it be cool to live in La Paz one day? And at that point in 2020, I made this Excel spreadsheet of like, here's all the things that would need to happen. And I was like frozen. Talk about, like the sympathetic nervous system just being like, oh, like I can't do that, to all of a sudden, I didn't need a spreadsheet.
Mm-hmm.
It was just like boom, 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 boom. Everything fell into place in the craziest ways where it would literally, the path was being cleared.
And what was the dream? Was it like, let's just get out of Dodge and go from there? Or was there this like bigger vision of what you guys were going to do?
The dream was two things. We want to see what it's like to live somewhere else and be immersed in nature and beauty and culture. And we want to travel. And why wait to do these things that we want to do with our kids when they're small? Because there's a tendency, and I held this tendency, to just think those things happen later, like retirement happens later. And I will say I've always kind of been a person that's like, let's just do that weird thing that we're thinking of doing.
Yes.
This was just on such a bigger scale, obviously.
Yeah. Yeah. And what was the moment that you guys both agreed to this? Because like that can be kind of the hard part too, right? When you're in a partnership and you have a family, there's like a lot more layers than you just being an individual and being brave and being like, let me try this out. There's no, what's the worst that could happen? But there's a lot more layers when you have a partner and family that you have to convince to come along.
Absolutely. I think the work that we had done in our relationship, which wasn't like, we're going to do the work. It was really just practicing, awkwardly saying the thing we're thinking, or what I learned in my upbringing, similar to my husband, is just like a kind of stuff it in, don't talk about anything, save that for later. So we had been kind of practicing that. The way this happened, it just couldn't be any more organic, to where I said, what if we just try to sell our house? And in that moment, instead of Britt being like, well, here's all the reasons we couldn't, he was just like, oh, okay, maybe we could.
Yes.
Yeah. And I think that came from us practicing that.
Yeah. And I want to hear more about the journey, but like, I want to dive into the mindset of like, anything is possible, or anything could be possible. Like, were you guys just like, hell yeah, all in, let's do this, anything's possible? Or what was the work that came up as you started to actually go through the steps?
Yeah. The work that came up was really just have that non-attachment. Every step of the way, we were like, let's just see what happens. Let's just see let's talk to a contractor. Let's talk to our realtor. And that really was, the work was like staying excited with non-attachment.
It's so interesting because there's some foundation there that has to be there in order to do that, right? Is it faith? Is it certainty in your trust in yourself, trust in each other? Like, if you could pinpoint something, what would you say it is?
Yeah, I think it is a mix of all of those, and it hadn't always been that way. It's not like we came into relationship being like, we're just always on the same page and we always trust each other. That came through recommitting over and over again to each other. And then there was this, Britt at first skeptically watched me go on my own spiritual and healing journey. And I say that with a lot of compassion, like, but he was a skeptic.
Oh yeah.
So
I understand.
He,
I have one of those.
yeah. But to see even from like 2017 or 2015, we had our twins. Between that and 2017, just like dark period, to see from 2017 to 2022, he was just like, well, something is working. I can't understand it. And I'll listen to something that Lindsey is listening to and it makes sense, even though I don't know why. So without me being like, okay, get into this, get into what I'm getting into. You need to, I would just be like, the only thing we need to do is please sit down with me regularly and let's we called it awkward conversation. Let's have this awkward conversation. Let's be vulnerable in a way that we weren't used to in our relationship. And those were just those seeds that were planted along the way to where Britt could get he could like get on my ride. Not saying that I was the activator of the idea. He wouldn't have brought it. But he could get on because I wasn't forcing him to, and he had had evidence that whatever this thing is works.
Yeah.
Whatever this belief is true.
I like that. And as you guys started to pack up, load up your kid, talk to your kids, tell your family, was it smooth sailing? And you were like, oh yeah, everyone agrees, anything is possible. We should go create the exact life we're dreaming.
No way. The little one, that's easy, right?
Yeah.
In looking back, I was like, oh my gosh, I did so much traveling with a 18-month to 2.5-year-old. That's crazy. And that was fortified with having twins first. So I was like, I can do anything with one baby. We could go anywhere, kid.
I mean, having twins must be its own spiritual journey.
It's like a multi-series conversation.
I can't even imagine.
Yeah. So, but our older boys, the twins, they didn't want to. They were resistant. They were like, wait, we like our school. We like our friends. We love our house. We grew up here. And we just offered it as well, there's not an alternative because this is what's happening, but we involved them so much along the way. So you get to choose what you keep. You get to choose within what'll fit in a suitcase. You get to choose what you bring. You won't be going to school anymore, so you get to choose what you want to learn. And that got them more on board. Yeah. It became, even the thing, when we had an estate sale, we had so many, I know every parent can relate to this, so many toys. So the things that we sold, I'm like, you get to keep the money. It's yours. What do you want to use it for? So as much as we could, involving them in the shedding, even though it wasn't really up to them, they're still involved.
Yeah. That makes a ton of sense. We're actually, we haven't really told anyone other than our family. We're actually moving to North Carolina in 2.5 months. Yes, to little beach town called Wilmington. We've been there. I've been to North Carolina once, and it was 2 months ago when we went to scout this town. And so I've spent a total of 4 days there. And it's not quite a I don't know. I think that there is a little bit of that, if anything's possible, right? My husband is very grounded. He's a Virgo moon, very grounded, very logical. And so my decision-making is more of love change, love adventure, and the similar place, anything is possible. And I've had to, but that doesn't work for him. I've had to pair it with the things that are very logical that he thinks are important, like, you know, the safety, the financial aspects, like, so it's been an interesting journey for us. We showed up there again, we went for like 4 or 5 days as a family to check it out, and by like a day in, I was like, I'm good. Yeah, like, let's move here. The energy feels good. Like, my nervous system feels good. And he was like, we haven't even seen any. Like, we were scheduled to go around with a realtor, and like, he's like, we haven't even seen anything. What do you mean you're good to move here? Like, I saw the beach. Like, that's as much as I need. So we're about to go on a much smaller version of your journey, but we've been together for 15 years. We've lived in LA or in California the entire time. I never imagined, we're both from the East Coast, not North Carolina, from up north. Never imagined going back east. Like, even being on a different in a different time zone feels weird. I was born in California, so it's always felt like home to me. Our daughter was born out here. So we're like, we've made the decision. I wouldn't say my head's fully wrapped around it yet, but we're about to go on a like smaller version of this journey.
Wow. Oh, it's so amazing. And it's not smaller though. It's the same.
Yeah.
It looks different. I was just talking to our mutual friend today, and it's like we were saying like the ingredients or the flavors or whatever are different, but it is the same story. And then you can see like in our lineage, even people before, you know, our people before us, whoever that is, like the people that I come from, whatever that means, went on a huge adventure in some way, or like decided to go somewhere,
right?
Even if it's from like Missouri to Texas or like France to Canada, I don't know. So there's something in there that like calls us and has been calling people.
Yeah, and I think different for a lot of us, and I wonder, I'd be so interested to understand like your astrocartography lines, because there is just things that happen too, like with the cosmos, with the universe, that trigger things at different times in our lives. We need different things at different times in our life. We need to be different places. Like I had my astrologer look at my astrocartography, and it's like the themes and lessons are so on point for when I moved to LA to leaving. It's like, okay, yes, I'm done with all of that. It's time to go. It's so wild. But I think, yeah, change, I think we're ready to, and I don't know, like, I love that we're having this conversation, because I think a lot of people are ready to change this perspective on change from it being scary to it being good and full of opportunity and a big adventure.
Right. And like now you can feel the stirring that like now is the time for some action. And what if we could practice this idea of what's the worst thing that could happen?
Yes. I love that.
It brings a different energy when you think about if life is a game, like let's play it lightly. Because what if we don't go? Then we know what's here. That's great. But what if we just try? What is the worst that could happen?
Yeah. And for me, a lot of it has been cultivating that relationship to myself and self-trust, and kind of knowing like there's no wrong decision, right? And no matter what direction I go with something, I trust that if it doesn't feel right, I'll be able to notice that and acknowledge it and then make the next best decision. And I think that having that, and I think whether you knew it at the time, I feel like that was probably at the core of a lot of how you were operating, is you just had this undeniable trust for yourself, and that you'd have to have that to be like, I'm selling my house. We're not moving to the next house. Like, we don't really have a plan, you'd have to have that trust with yourself that like, hey, whatever comes our way, like I'm going to figure it out. No big deal.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. What do you do? What helped you cultivate that trust?
Probably a similar thing. One of the big things, probably a similar thing that helped you, running a business, man. Running a business will force you. It will either, if you don't cultivate that relationship with yourself, like it will force you into the ground. Like, I think you have to have that. And you were in the restaurant industry, right? Like that is such a wild and difficult industry. So would love to hear a little bit about that experience and like what you learned from that, and how and if that kind of led you on the more spiritual path.
Yes, and it took a really long time to get there. The way I ended up in the restaurant business is a little bit kind of like this story. Well, I was working in a restaurant, but I was 24. And the option for me to buy one of the locations, the founder was just like, you're good at this. Do you want to like own this as a franchise? And it actually couldn't, it's a very similar story. That was in it was a month before Britt and I got married. And so I was like, yes, but in January. And so that was in August. By January, I owned a restaurant.
Wow.
And so learning in the game is how I became an entrepreneur, a business owner. I didn't even call myself an entrepreneur the entire time that I owned a business. I still don't feel like I can't try that on. I'm like, am I? But that's what it is, right? Is like learning in the game. And so then everything that I learned in those 12 years, I had to bring with me. And being a young person so much has changed now with the way that we receive information. So I think that maybe a spiritual path or whatever is working for people is way more accessible now. But at that time in 2008, it just wasn't part of my experience at all.
Yeah. 2008 in Texas also.
In Texas. Yeah. And it was a vegan restaurant. So of course there's like,
oh, wild.
The hippie people coming in. I mean, and of course I feel I was always adjacent.
Yes.
To every kind of life path. But really that like what that was for me for so long was this like this turning of the ego, I didn't see it at that time where my ego was like totally taking hold. And then it's like a death ceremony. And then I'm the leader that I'm meant to be. And then it happens over and over and over. And that is that was my experience of owning a business. That's still my experience. Now I'm a solopreneur or whatever. And that is still my experience.
Yeah. It's kind of like training camp. Right? Like, but except for it's a long ass training camp, but it can be so intense. And while you're in it, at least my experience is like, gosh, a lot of times you just feel like you're like running the hamster wheel and then like a tornado comes through and knocks everything around and then you get back on. But when you can step outside of it and like look back at all those times, it's a lot of proof points of like, whoa, I can do hard things. I can figure things out. Like I am resilient. And I got to a point where I was able to I was able to look back because I had kind of run myself so far into the ground and was so burnt out that I had no choice but to like look at things from a different perspective and start to pick myself back up and figure out how to do it in a different way. And in the looking back, I became very, very confident and like, damn, there aren't many situations that I would say that at this point in life, I'm like, I'm good. I can literally figure out anything. Yes. Not that I would want to experience all those things again. And like, probably could have learned a lot of those lessons in an easier way. But I didn't. And, I'm here where I am now and very happy with where I am now. And just like, damn, that girl was a badass and she did not even know it. And now like I can hold my head high and go into any circumstance, but cool. I got this.
That is I wish everyone just would listen to that over and over again. Whatever you have, like with whatever you got right now, you can do it. It's enough. And I mean, you want to get into like how we are carrying this story that like we are not enough, you know? Whatever that is in real time. I wasn't even realizing I was learning that lesson at the time as someone in their mid 20s and then 30s and mid 30s. But that's what it is like, you have specifically in business, it's the same for parenthood. It's like, this is what's happening. So whatever I have is enough. I'm going to show up with whatever I have.
Yeah, it's so interesting that you bring up that story because as you say that, it is, and I don't know if it's the same for men, but I feel like that is kind of the root of it all. It's the root of all the stories, of all the pain that we put on ourselves, of all the the negative self-talk is like this idea that we are not enough. And like, if we could just get over that, and we have to, right? Like, in order to believe anything is possible and create the life you want, which is where we all want to go, you have to believe that you are enough.
Right. Oh, and whatever that like brings up for someone, even whatever it brings up for like you and me, it's not even ours.
Yeah.
We're like bringing generations.
Well, that's why I want to talk to you about the somatic work that you do, because that was one thing for me on my journey when I was at my toughest points. And one of the big things for me that I realized, and I would recommend to people listening, like, say some mantras to yourself, like say, I am enough, and see how that sits. And for me, Lindsey, it was, I am safe. And I still get a little chill saying it. I've done so much work around it. And when I realized like, oh, I'm operating from a place where I don't feel safe, and I've been doing that since I was very small, I couldn't even say I am safe without like crying and without having this like physical reaction. And one of the things that helped me a ton was actually somatic work. And I think people hear they hear the word somatic, they hear about somatic work, but I think people don't really fully understand what it is or how it can impact us or why it's so important. So do you mind sharing a little bit about that?
Yeah. My experience with somatic work sounds similar, where I had been in traditional therapy. It did help me a bunch. And then it got to a certain point where I was just ready to do something else. So what I learned about somatic work, which is a big word and it can be attached to so many things, but for me, what was so beneficial was that even though I'd done all this work in therapy, what I was saying or what I was like processing with my words was in some way still kind of looping back.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like the groove in the record.
It's like you can get your brain to believe it, but like that's not enough. Your brain like can say, yes, I understand, but how do you really believe it?
Right. And so a somatic approach, of course, is body-based, but it's like relationship-based. And when I can be with an emotion and just feel it in the body and make this like tiny separation between the emotion and then the story of what happened to me or what this means about me, it's that crack. And it's the crack where the light gets in, And so it opened up this really creative, and this is what I now do with people. It just opens up like a creative way of relating to the emotional body.
Yes. Yes.
That takes it out of the rational mind. And then it starts to feel like poetry. And like sometimes it's really tough poetry, but even then I'm experiencing emotions as this physical sensation. We can do that in a safe container that maybe doesn't feel safe because maybe you're like, I'm not safe. But maybe there's someone with you that's like, we got this. We're just going to touch in. It's gentle also, where some things like maybe EMDR, also amazing, can be like more, for some can be like a little more rough. It like scratches at it a little more. It's just this gentle way of experiencing emotions that then you realize, oh, my body had been holding that for like 20, 30 years.
Yes. Yes.
And you can't even like put it on a rational, like linear. It's not like you can be like, okay, point A was here and point B is here, because it's experiential. It's relating to emotions. And then it doesn't really need to make sense. This is what I always tell people. Like,
Yes.
it doesn't need to make
Yes.
sense. What you're feeling doesn't need to make sense. And we don't need to attach it to anything. We actually want to like let it go.
Just let it go. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I love that. Like, it's a different way to relate to a belief or emotion, right? Is that my like understanding of what you were saying? And when we can relate in a different way and see it from a different angle or a different perspective, or experience it from a different angle or perspective, it allows us to like see the cracks in the theory or the story or the idea, right? And maybe get to the truth of it a little bit better, or not even have to get to the truth, and just like, cool, I'm done with that.
Right. That's why I love like somatic or just body-based experiencing emotions with this belief work that is mindfulness, that really says, I don't have to believe all these thoughts. This is not the full story. This is just one perception, one perspective from everything I've gathered, but it's infinite.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so that's that separation. Like, that's that crack. Is like, oh, I can, when it feels even just a little bit safe, detach from that story. Not to disassociate, but like to really come in here.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. And I know one of the big things that you work with people on, and it's something that we talk about all the time on this podcast, is helping them connect to their intuition. And it is, I do, in my oracle sessions and my psychic readings, it comes up constantly. Like, pretty much every session, it comes up like, hey, if you could connect to your own intuition, you're being very guided. Like, if you could see this from this perspective. And everyone wants to know, like, well, how do I connect? What was your path to connect to intuition? How do I connect to my intuition? And it's hard to put into steps and words. So I would love to hear how you share that with people, or kind of how you guide them back to their intuition.
Yeah. Great question. There is this natural unfolding that can happen when someone is relating to their emotions in a different way, like in a body-based way, and also creating that space from the story, because we are so in the mind and we're so in the rational mind that it looks like another language. What does intuition mean? Because when I am asking for intuition, or not, when someone might be asking for intuition, what is coming in is actual, just like rational, or fear. And that's the confusing thing. That can be the confusing thing, because if you don't have a sense of what fear feels like, or a sense of what a true knowing feels like,
yes,
then the two might be a little intertwined or a little crossed. And it is very possible, I mean, for anyone to just like uncross those. It just takes a little practice.
Yes, I love that. That's such a simple explanation. And it reminds me of how one of my spiritual teachers once described something to me about like using your body as a pendulum. Are you familiar with a pendulum? And like, you ask it a question and it goes one way for yes and one way for no. And just like use your body as a pendulum and start to notice when you're in different situations, how does your body change? Like, is there do you get a pain somewhere? Do you tighten up? Do you, like, whatever it is? For me, it's usually like the clenching of the jaw or the shoulders, or sometimes I'll literally even crunch my hands and toes and not even realize it and be like, why do my feet hurt today? And start to notice just what's happening with your body in different situations, and then, you know, use that as kind of the barometer for like, is this a yes? Is this a no? What's going on in the situation that I either do or don't like?
I love that pendulum. Yeah, I always say your body's an antenna. So like,
Yes.
tune into it. You're always giving and receiving information. And if you know the language of yourself, which is really unique, even though we could talk about it and it could be similar, it's unique, that you will know. You will just know. But I can't give you, like, I can't make you know.
Right.
But I can be like, you know.
You know. But you know, I know you know. God damn it.
I know you can know.
Yeah. I know you can know. How do you describe intuition? Because I feel like I'm interested to hear how you would describe intuition.
Yeah, I would describe intuition as that yes. And I know we have probably all heard the like full body yes. I even will like rag on that a little bit, because do you know what a full body anything is, maybe if you're always in the head?
Right.
For me, when I've had like a full, I wouldn't call it a fully body yes. Like when I was like, let's leave Texas, let's sell this house, it's like a pin dropping. I know. It is body based, but it's not this like, I'm on fire.
Right. Sometimes it's almost having like a neutrality.
Exactly.
Right? Like having no reaction to something is also almost as much of an indicator.
Right. And as much as you can notice when constriction is happening, like my hands are tight or my feet are tight, okay, well, I'm like holding on to something. So I could let that go, and then intuition can emerge. So that's how you would know like what a not intuitive hit would be. Because if I'm thinking, I got to get out of here, but I'm like, that might be, although that might be true, maybe there's real danger, it might not be intuition.
Yeah. Yes. I love that. And I think that what you said, like the full body yes, like I think for some people, look, there's different ways that we feel it and experience it. And even when you are fully aware of what your intuition is and how you're guided, it shows up differently all the time too. For me, I think one of the reasons it's been so hard to give people the steps is like in a very, and I'm, as an intuition coach, I would love to hear your thoughts on this. Like I started to really cultivate my relationship with intuition and higher consciousness because I would hear things in my right ear. I would get messages in my right ear. And finally, I decided to stop ignoring them and start listening to them. And every time it was good, or it worked out, or like, and it would be, you know, small things, or sometimes like she'd give me a very clear message about like what not to do. But I'd start to hear things and be like, okay, why do I keep ignoring that or pushing it down or naysaying it? I'm gonna start to listen to it and do it. And the more I listened, the better things got, the better I felt. And then I started to connect to all of the other pieces of my intuition.
I'm so glad you said that, because normally when someone comes to me, when I work with someone, they've already had the intuitive hit. They just didn't claim it as that, or they didn't call it that, but there's like something that they want to do and there's hesitation, or there's like some unlayering that needs to happen to follow the intuition. So actually, I think people are receiving the intuition and just not calling it that and going back to rational mind and being like, well, here's why I can't.
Yeah.
So that's why we bring somatic work in, because it's like, well, let's just decondition and unlayer that so there can be a sense of trust in the body, so that you can, in a small or big way, follow that intuitive hit you've already gotten. And then the next one will come through. And then the next one will come through, because we do have to take the action on an intuitive hit or an exciting idea. It's that thing that you're like, oh, this doesn't make sense, but I'm moving to North Carolina. That's the intuitive hit, It's like, oh yeah, it doesn't make sense, but I'm going to do it.
Yeah.
So when someone comes to me, usually they've already had the intuitive hit, but they're like, I have no idea. They either don't know that's what it is, and it'll come in later, and they're like, oh, I've always had this thing or recently I wanted to do this. I'm like, well, that's it. So we just unlayer so you can do that.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. And I want to talk to you about like just using leading your days with intuition or being intuitively led, because I think there is the scenarios where it's like the big thing that you can't get off your mind, and for some reason it keeps coming up, right? And I love that, and I love to pay attention to that, because I still, as connected as I am to my intuition and higher consciousness, I can still make the excuses. But if something can't get off my mind for a few days or a few weeks or keeps coming up, I'm like, all right, bypass the brain. Like, let's just do this and figure it out. There's a reason. But also, like, in the little date, like, I now, for the most part, and it has brought me so much peace in life to like lead. I have the constant connection with it just is. So 90% of the things I'm doing in my day are just intuition led, because it's almost like an internal conversation that you're having constantly, and this constant feedback that's guiding and leading you. What are your thoughts on that? And like, where do people start to really like be in their intuition at all times, or have it be one and the same, like override the ego, override the logical brain, and be operating intuitively?
Yes, first of all. And what we do is hold it lightly. So again, it goes back to like just not being, this sounds big, but like not being so serious about life.
Yes.
And so if something comes in, it's like, email this person or reach out to this person. I haven't thought about that person in 2 years. Just practice doing it and see what happens next. See what unfolds. So there is a level of detachment, but doing it anyway. The way we get out of the mind is to practice in real time, just knowing that this is where a little bit of parts work comes into play, because you can know like who's in the driver's seat right now. Is this the voice that wants to keep me right here because we know what this is? Because we know that voice, like we honor her, and we know if there's something, even if it's random, like I said, send this person a text, go to this store. Why? Just try it. Just do it, because then the bigger things will come through.
Yeah.
So the bypassing that part of the mind, it is a little bit of parts work, but it's really just its presence.
And I think that like the have fun with it and like not take it so seriously. Like also when you start like thinking about those things and thinking about intuition, listening, like there's always fun. Like the universe is out here having fun too. Like there's always like the signs, like the microwave always saying 444 or whatever it is. Like have fun with that stuff too, because you will be so shocked at the signs that happen when you like, to help encourage you, like, yes, you're doing it, keep doing it, and that's where stuff gets fun and so silly, and you're just like, this is all a game, and this is all for us to like learn and have fun and be in the experience.
Right. Because the example of like, oh, go to the grocery store right now, go to the one you don't normally go to. And then you go there and you see a person, and then it reminds you like, oh yeah, I was going to do this thing. I should talk to them. Again, just letting it be a fun game. And this is where I really like have a stance on just spiritual practice in general, is like, why not? We have enough of like mundane, whatever, day to day. Let's find the magic in the mundane.
Yes.
And why not like use, someone could also be like, oh, 444 on the microwave, that's like such hocus pocus. It's like, well, who cares?
Right.
It's just more fun.
Yes. 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 So agree with that. And that's what I say to my husband all the time about astrology. He's like, well, it's not a science. I'm like, I'm having way more fun than you are. And like total typical Scorpio. Like he lives his astrology like so hardcore and has no idea. I'm like, you would say that.
You would.
You would be doing that because the moon is in Pisces, and yeah, that makes sense for your sign. How do you integrate this stuff personally? Like, how does this stuff show up in your day-to-day and the way that you live life with twins and a small child and a husband and running your own business and all the things?
I mean, I like the simplest thing is where I used to be so reactive. And when I say like the person I am today is 1000% different from who I was 10 years, a decade ago.
Dude, restaurant owners are crazy. I worked in restaurants like from 15 to 24. And that was my biggest observation was like, I will never be a restaurant owner. These people are crazy. Like you have to, there just has to be something. There's something in there. And wait, what are your top 3 in astrology?
Pisces sun.
We love a Pisces sun. I love anything Pisces. Okay.
Gemini rising Taurus moon.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay. This is an interesting combination.
And like stellium in Pisces and Sag.
What?
Yeah.
Interesting. What are the 3 in Pisces?
I actually don't remember. That I don't remember.
Okay.
I know Venus is 1 and I can't remember the other 2.
Oh my gosh. Well, I need to look at your chart.
Yeah, I'll send you my
this is, oh my gosh. Okay. Interesting. Okay. You got. This is a good, interesting combo. This all makes sense. For anyone who is listening that knows astrology, this all makes sense.
Yeah. And the way that I'm going to have to remind myself of the question or where we're going, but like the way I bring practice or whatever into my daily life is that, I mean, I see that it works because the reactive person that I was 10 years ago, I'm a completely different person. Even and continuing, I'm a completely different parent than I was a year ago.
Yeah.
And I see evidence of it everywhere. The way that I use it is that I don't pile myself with work. I mean, I like to be busy. I was a restaurant owner. Like we like to do, I was traveling before this. I'm obviously a person that likes to do, and I needed rest. And so I give myself some space while also knowing that I like to generate. Yes. I like to create. And just like everyone, like I am doing all the mundane. I'm doing the mundane, but my mindfulness practice reminds me like, oh, it's when I'm sweeping, like, let me come fully here.
Yeah.
Or when I am like folding the clothes, wiping the noses, all of these, I'm not a monk. I'm like doing the real life things, taking care of my kids when I'm making the nuggets or whatever. It's always an opportunity in those times to like be fully present with whatever I am doing. And then it becomes magical. Like then I remember my body.
Yes. The path to presence is so interesting because it's this simple concept, right? Like, why can't we? And like you've just shared, it's the key to pretty much all of it, right? If we can be present, a lot gets a lot easier. But why is it so hard for us? Like the concept of being present is very simple. Like be in the moment, Why is it so difficult for us?
I believe it's so simple that it's almost boring, and we are like we're like starved for boredom because we are constantly consuming. I mean, obviously with the internet and social media, and then just our people and our duties and all of these things. So we are like constantly consuming, or we're constantly like given something to react to that takes us out of the present, on top of our mind, which has a tendency to naturally go past our future. And so we could be like, oh, well, we need to get rid of this or get rid of that. Or we could be like, we're here right now. Like, this is what's happening on Earth, and it's wild. We're on a wild ride. So it must be that I am to come into presence, even though all of these things are begging for my attention. It must not even be wrong.
Right.
Like, it must be that all of these exact ingredients for this moment on this planet, all of this madness and like chaos, like we must be here to like work in it, you know? And that shift, I think, provides us with a space to actually act like from a compassionate heart instead of like from a reactive place.
Yeah. And I think like the thing is, when you have the ability to be present, whether it's like by choice or by default, if you can then reflect, like it does feel so much better. Like time does slow down. I mean, we're coming up on the holidays, you know, what a good time to practice presence, especially for those of us who don't live close to family. And it might be like, you know, you see them once or twice a year, like put the phone away and just try to be present. I did this summer with my family and spent a week in, you know, a summer week with my family in New York State. And it was like, we could have been there for 3 weeks. Like time went so slow. My daughter was like so well behaved because she was getting like the mental attention that she wanted. Like it was just I came out of that experience with my family having no regrets. I wasn't reactive. Like the time hadn't gone too fast. I didn't there were no missed opportunities. Like the whole experience felt whole and complete. And it was only because I was able to be present.
Yeah. And can you imagine like just living from that space? 10%, 1% will change your life. Like these tiny little actions that we can take, you know, put us on a completely new, like people want to talk about like timeline jumping or whatever because it's fun. But it's real in that way. Like it is real because just that little bit of like, let me put a little bit of presence into this can put us on a new trajectory.
Yeah, I love that you brought that up. And my understanding and my experience with it has been is like, yeah, we want a timeline hop or like hop to a new frequency or quantum leap or whatever. It's not a leap. It's like in every moment you have the opportunity to choose this vibration or this, you know, people can't see my hands, a higher vibration or a lower vibration. And the more times you choose the higher vibration, then you're just walking that path of the higher vibration. And like that has made it really simple for me because I am far, far, far from perfect. But because I've slowed down, because I try to be present, I now have a different way of processing. I have way more time almost to process decisions, right? And so I can give myself the time and the space to choose that higher vibration as much as possible. And then you're just in that vibration.
Right. And then it's like you are creating your reality or you're choosing your story because you're choosing to not be so over-identified with the previous narrative or with the what happened to me. And I think that's a lot of people I work with, and myself included, have experienced some level of trauma. And at some point we just decide what to do with it. And that doesn't mean that we don't make space for it, or we don't honor it, or that like we weren't hurt in some way, but it happened and now we decide what to do with it. And that can be in those big moments, but also be in the really small, like this moment, we just decide what to do with it, whatever it is.
Lindsey, that is like such an incredible and important message. And I think especially right now, like back to what we were talking about in the beginning, like anything is possible. We get to decide what our life looks like. Like we also get to decide how we let the past impact us and how we move forward from it. And have started to do my reflecting on the year, you know, preparing for the new year, all the things we do. And I've had this like, you know, bring me to my knees crying realization that this year I could have done nothing else, but I fully let go of my relationship to my past trauma. Like there is no charge to it, and crying because I'm so grateful, but also like how do we help other people do that? That is freedom. It feels like true freedom. It's like a holy shit moment for me of like, now I want to like bundle this up and like help people get there themselves. Like, and I say like that's what happened this year. You know, it's been a lifelong journey, right? But the freedom from the past and letting it impact the present and the future is like, it's incredible.
Yeah. Oh man, I can feel that. How we do that is we show up in patience and grace, you know, and as many times as it takes. It doesn't mean, and I'm not talking about like doing work for someone, but as many times as it takes. I'm just saying it just for even me, like as many times as it takes, as many times as you go back to identifying with it or remember, you know, like feeling like a victim, that's okay too. Like that's part of the journey. That's part of the walk. And it might not get like, it's never going to be like all clean and perfect, because then there'll be something else to work on. But really creating a space within, you know, my own body or even beyond my body, like auric field or whatever, where someone could come in and have their pain, and it doesn't matter what it is. Like we can let it be big. You can identify with it. And then maybe we could just show each other a glimmer of like, there could be another way. Yeah. And then it's planting a seed for someone else. And we don't even know, when I think about the things that like healed me, it will be the simplest things, or the things that started a journey would be like a meme. You know what I mean? Or a podcast. No shit. Like the simplest things will be like, oh, maybe I could, or maybe it'll trigger, you know, like sometimes we need to be, I am like, let's get activated. So sometimes maybe we'll hear something be like, ooh, no, never, but it's planting a seed and we follow it for some reason. And again, then it's like these shifts just it's unfolding.
Yeah. And I think it's going back to a lot of things we talked about and you brought up, is like giving yourself the space to like quieting down, slowing down, giving yourself the space to listen, giving yourself the opportunity to connect with your intuition, being willing, even just declaring like, I am ready to let this shit go. Like, unfortunately, that doesn't fully do it, but, you know, letting the universe know the willingness to like let it go and the willingness to show up. Like those two things alone like move the needle quite a bit.
Yeah, exactly. And something that actually just came to my mind is when we think about offering this just as like a being of loving service to the world as a whole, would be that, you know, it's you have your pain for sure. And I honor that. Like if someone comes into my space, and in the smallest ways, if we can not also get so hooked into it, you know, whatever your pain is, Brooke, what you've experienced, I honor that. And I know that you're not just that. You are like everything.
Yeah.
And so what has happened or what you have experienced is valid, and it's just one slice of the pie.
Yeah. And as for me, like, as you gain life experience, as you start to remove the conditioning, as you start to like explore like the life that you want to live and the things that you're excited about, like that slice just becomes smaller and smaller. And for me, I got to a place where I was like, okay, let me just extract the lessons. Like, let me, the charge is removed. It all happened. I was there. But there's a lot that I learned out of those things. And for better or worse, those things have been a part of making me who I am today, you know, which is something that a person that I'm very proud to be. So it's like, okay, let's find the good. Let's let go of the bad. Let it stop impacting our lives. And like, especially I feel like at this age, like in your mid to late 30s, if you're starting to wake up and it's like, it feels like it's time to live, right? It feels like, cool, we got a lot of lessons out of the way. We are starting to give less shits about what other people think about us. And like, let's set ourselves free and believe that anything is possible and then go out there and create it.
Right. That's that belief work in practice, you know? Yeah. Because we start replacing those like limiting or whatever that, you know, the beliefs we're hooked onto to like, oh, I think I could do this.
Yeah. Let's loop back to your anything is possible story. So give us the real life example of follow it through the anything is possible. Tell us the happy ending or the happy middle.
Honestly, the happy ending is still unfolding. To be fully honest, what happened in that we traveled for 9 months as a family, it was incredible. It was amazing. I will like never trade those memories for anything. And what I was still learning on the road, like, because what I brought with me were some older parts, you know, that I had to in real time work with and practice. And I think the happy ending is all of it. It's not an ending. I mean, fully believe that we are just getting started.
Yeah.
That was one thing that we did. It was incredible. Now we live in Ojai. It's incredible. And now it's like a different kind of adventure because it's so simple. So it's like we kind of had to, I had to like get that adventure, and there will be more because just like you mentioned, also same, I like adventure. I want to, you know, do the thing. But now it's like this adventure. It's a deeper adventure in.
Yes.
So it's always a beginning.
Yeah. I love that. And I'm so curious, like, I can't even imagine how this has impacted the relationship between the four of you.
Yeah, 5 of us.
5 of you.
Yeah, and our dog.
left a kid out.
Yeah.
Wait, did the dog come traveling with you too? Okay.
No. But she's here now. We are just so close. And that doesn't mean that we don't have our challenges. Of course we do. But the way that I parent now is different, spending so much time, real time with my kids. We have a different kind of, our communication is just, you know, like 180 degrees different. And because of that, I notice, of course, everyone thinks their kids are advanced or whatever. But for me, it's true. That
I feel you so hard. I feel you.
We just have conversations, you know, and I'll notice in them, even the times when I might have believed like maybe they were too young, maybe it didn't impact them. And then they'll be like losing their minds over a sunset or a mountain. And I'm like, all right, we did the right thing, you know, or just like being really curious about why people are the way they are, or a culture, or anything. And I'm like, okay, we're creating a new reality for kids that is different than what we experienced, that is expansive instead of limiting. That's like, what are you interested in? What questions do you have?
Like, what a gift, actually. Like, it's actually making me tear up, because it's so expansive, and your kids are operating at 7 and 1 and, you know, whatever ages they are now, they're operating with the baseline of anything is possible. They're not 38 having to convince themselves that anything is possible. That's their baseline. And how magical is that? And like, how magical are their lives going to be?
Right. Oh, yes. And that, like, when I talk about, I often am like talking about parenting in this mindfulness lens to people, because that's, you know, what I practice. And my number one intention, well, I've also said my intention is to let them know anything is possible, truly. But what I want them to experience is that they're amazing. And when we hear all of these stories about like, oh, these kids are, you know, they're just like participation trophy kids or whatever, we need more of that. Like, we need real, authentic, like, you are incredible. And that's what I want to just like pour all over my kids, and every kid I see is just like, look at you, you're a miracle. What if our world had that baseline?
Yes. And your amazingness doesn't take away from anyone else being amazing.
Absolutely.
And that, like, imagine if everyone just had this full expression of self-awareness and self-love. Like, man, I would be tens of thousands of dollars richer if I, you know, I mean, actually, I've probably spent, the path of self-love has probably been 6 figures. Like, it is, you know, there is a lot of conditioning to undo, a lot of self-discovery, a lot of bobbing and weaving. And like, that is one of the things I'm so excited about our generation being parents, is like, the world is going to look very different because of our kids. And like, hopefully we can just get the hell out of their way when it's time, right, and let them run this thing from a very different, much more beautiful, peaceful perspective.
Yeah, let's hold that vision. Right.
So tell me, you are no longer a restaurant owner. And as I mentioned before, you work in the mindfulness, spirituality, self-empowerment space. Can you tell us exactly what you do and how you work with people?
Yeah. I have this unique, or maybe it's not unique, but how I work with people is in this mindfulness, somatic, spiritual mentor, like, lens, you know. So I work with people one-on-one, in containers, also single sessions, and then a group of women that is all of these modalities together, like really living spiritually, but like from within, and deconditioning. You know, what I see all the time is women in their late 30s to 60s that are waking up and need a place to like do some deconditioning, some unlayering, so that they can like do that actual thing that doesn't feel possible right now.
Yes. Yeah. Tell me, just for fun, because I think that I know a lot of our listeners are in that place of like feeling like they might be waking up. And I think that a lot, you know, if you believe in anything with the cosmos, they would tell us that over the next few months, a lot more people are going to be waking up over the next few years. What does that feel or look like? What are the beginnings? What does it feel like to wake up from your perspective?
You know what I think it looks like at first is really bogged down.
Mm-hmm.
And just being like, this can't be it.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe the
Mm-hmm.
first parts of waking up are not even awake yet,
Mm-hmm.
but it's like, maybe I don't even think anything's possible yet, but this feels too heavy.
Mm-hmm.
And so maybe there's a questioning, then it like sparks a question of like, is this it? And I know that like, that's such a midlife question, you know, is
Yes.
this it? Is this why we came to like do all this?
Mm-hmm.
So for me, then waking up is a intending to follow that, intending to be like, is this it? Getting curious, is this it? And for me, the spiritual experience is really grounded and really from within. So I think there's a new level of waking up that is a shedding. It's even a shedding of this like spiritual identity that needs a bunch of externals to be validated.
Yes. Yes. That is, for me, my experience. It was almost like, oh, I don't need any of that external validation anymore. I don't even want, like, it was like, ick. But now what does that mean? Who am I if I don't need the external validation? What motivates me? Like, what do I care about? You know, that was a piece of my waking up and everything else that you described. But
yeah.
At
some point, the real waking up has to be waking up to that like inherent goodness. You came here good, not the other way around. The story that we like came here and need to be saved, you know, that's like indoctrinated in religion. You are inherently good, and it is this light that is within you. And so we just peel back those layers that are hiding what is already there.
Yes, I love that. You are inherently good. You are powerful, and you have everything that you need. Like that's the new people. Like that is the truth, and that's where we're all going.
God is living within you. And when I say that, I don't just mean you, I mean you and you and you and you and you, and also in everything, because anything was a thought. So it's all God within, happening in the mind of God.
It's
fully in a body. It couldn't be more perfect.
I'm dying to go down this rabbit hole with you. I'm not going to, because I think people need I need to do some baseline.
Someone needs to go take a walk.
Yes. Oh my God. Yes. Like the quantum field, the reality of we are all one, the ground zero, God consciousness, however you want to get to understanding it, what Lindsey's saying is just, it's the truth. And the faster we can come home and acknowledge that truth and stop expecting the outside factor, there's nothing outside of us that is the truth, right? And there's also no one coming to save us. So if you're having this moment of awakening, in a really beautiful way, it's all on you. You've got this, you've got the power. Find the coaches. I would not go on the journey without a coach. You can, but there's so many layers to it. To have a partner to hold your hand. I have a coach and an astrologer that I talk to regularly, and also one-off stuff that has really accelerated my path and have been a beautiful mirror and sounding board. I think that we really need that. And I love that you have a group program, because I think that interactions with other people, experiencing things, talking, having conversations at this level there's every little moment in there is an opportunity for expansion, right? That's why we record and have these conversations, is we want people to find the expansive moments within these conversations. But like, you've got this, babe. Like you have everything that you need. Just like slow down and believe it and be willing to show up.
Right. Oh, and for anyone that might be scared by no one's coming to save you, we are saving each other.
Yes.
In every moment that we're awake, we are saving each other. We're shifting from collective independence to interdependence. And that's amazing because like we're doing everything together for each other.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. And it's really beautiful and confusing also, especially in these times. So it's like, find your people too. Like find the people who, that's been a huge, beautiful part of my journey, is like, the more I've gotten into this, the more I've felt true to myself, the more I've felt like I'm waking up, like the people just like, it's just like the people I need to meet kind of fall into my lap, the places I need to be. Like, find your people, find your community, because it makes it way more fun, right? Like, who wants to, like, the days of gossiping are so done, and talking about people, like, if my friends aren't, like, the only things I want to talk about are astrology, the quantum field, I'm still looking for a good friend who like wants to talk about aliens. So like, if there's anyone out there, my friends haven't quite gotten on board with that, but like human design, all the like that's the world we're going to. Like, find those people, the friends that are still gossiping and talking about the other friends, or like talking about the boring stuff. Like,
it's so tired.
Done. Yeah.
Yeah. Like you could just feel the energy drop even just saying it, you know? We don't want to be there. We are done.
Yeah. This has been so fun. I feel like like I said in the beginning, there's a million places we could go, and I feel like we barely scratched the surface.
Agree.
I have one last question for you. You have 10 seconds with someone that those are the only 10 seconds you're ever going to have with them. What do you say? What do you tell them?
Oh my gosh. Oh, that's so good. You know, I already said it, but you came here good. It's all within you. Like, whatever you want to do, wherever you're headed, it all is going to come from within. And let that be empowering. Let that be beautiful.
Yeah.
Know that there are no hindrances that we are not, that are. That's another conversation. Side note, let me say, I'm going beyond 10 seconds, but I know there are hindrances, and we collectively experience many different realities that are imposed by structures. The hindrances that are created by the mind, you have everything it takes to go where you want to go. That's what I want to say to them.
Yeah. I love that. Where can people find you? How can they work with you?
You can find me on Instagram at It's Linsey Akey. My website is just linseyakey.com. I co-host a podcast with my husband. We're coming back for season 3 about our own starting over journey. And then we talk to people who have started over, either they chose to or life hit them with something. And that's really what we're talking about a lot this season, is like, what do you do when life hits you with that something? It's called Can We Start Over? So you can look for that on everywhere you listen to podcasts, wherever you're listening to this one. And that's it.
Yeah, I love that. You are such an inspiration. Thank you for all that you're putting out into the world, and so many expansive moments in this for me, and how funny of a timing for us to meet when I'm about to embark on my own journey. And like, yes, you are holding the space for me to envision what the possibilities are.
Yeah. Oh, well, thank you for saying that. Yeah. I feel so honored to have this conversation. It just, how beautiful that we get to like touch in and have these special moments. And then you get to go do something. And I'm like, oh, Here she goes. Yeah, it's amazing.
Yeah, so stay tuned for that adventure, everyone. Cat's out of the bag, and I'm still processing, so it should be interesting. But we're very excited. It'll be a fun, kind of similar to how you guys looked at it, a fun little journey for our family, and like we're just gonna figure it out as we go.
Exactly. What else can you do?
Yeah, true. Good point. All right, Lindsey, thank you so much for being here and sharing all your wisdom. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Brooke. Thank you so much.
Yeah, and thank you everyone for listening. This feels like a good episode to maybe listen to a few times, bring your journal along, take some notes. It feels like a good episode to prepare for the holiday season and prepare for heading into family time and some situations that could be triggering, or if nothing else, no negativity, just, a reminder to come back to presence and how great the opportunity to be present can be. So I hope this episode is as inspiring for all of you as it has been for me. Feel free to share it with a friend and make sure you follow Lindsey on all her platforms. Appreciate you guys.